Welcome to our Setting Up and Reviewing Clinical Logs tutorial. To ensure that your students meet their graduation requirements, you will need to keep track of their patient encounters in their clinical courses. You can keep track of these patient encounters using clinical logs. These clinical logs keep track of the clinical educator who supervised the encounter, the date of the encounter, patient demographics, and the time the students spend on interventional and evaluative practice during the encounter. This tutorial will cover how to activate, review and run reports on students' clinical logs. To set up clinical logs, navigate to the Courses section of your system using your dashboard or upper left-hand hamburger menu, and click on the Course Offerings tab. First, you need to make sure you have placement-based course offerings created. For more information on how to set up courses and course offerings, please watch our Setting Up and Managing Courses tutorial. Once these course offerings are created, you can then set up clinical logs. Click on the name of a course offering to access the Course Offerings page. Then click on the Learning Activities drop-down from the left-hand menu, and select the Setup option. Click on the pencil icon in the Clinical Logs section. A window will then open for you to configure the clinical logs for students placed in this course. To preview the clinical log layout, click on the eye icon to the right of the template drop-down. You can then view the clinical log that students will fill out and submit. Next, toggle the Activate bit to activate clinical logs for placed students in this course. You can always leave this bit untoggled to only configure the clinical log options without making clinical logs available to students. In the Log Must Be Created Within Days of Patient Encounter section, indicate how many days away from the encounter date the student is allowed to submit clinical logs. For example, if you entered 10 days here and the student attempts to submit a clinical log detailing a patient encounter from 2 weeks ago, the student will not be able to submit the log. In the Grading section, indicate whether you would like clinical logs to contribute to the student's final score. If you chose yes, you would then need to enter the number of points you would like the clinical log to be worth, and the overall weightage you would like clinical logs to contribute to the student's final score. Click on the wrench icon to customize the columns of the clinical log viewable when a school faculty or clinical educator reviews their logs. The first 4 columns are not editable, but you can delete any of the other columns using the respective trash bin icon, or reorder columns using the up and down arrows and double ellipses. To re-add a deleted column or add a new one, click on the Add a Column button and select the column you would like to add. Be sure to click on the Save button once you are finished. You can also choose if you want students to send clinical logs for clinical educator review after they submit them. Click on the Template Preview hyperlink to view the email that will be sent to the experiential supervisor. In the Attestation section, activate the Enable Attestation bit to provide an attestation that clinical educators need to sign when they review student-submitted logs. For example, if you want clinical educators to pledge their integrity while reviewing clinical logs, you can add an academic integrity attestation in the Attestation Message section. Once you are done, be sure to click on the Save button to save the clinical log configuration. Please note that if you marked clinical logs as active in this course, students who are registered and placed in the course will now be able to submit clinical logs for their placement in this course. After students submit clinical logs, you can then review their submissions. To review student clinical logs, click on the Review option from the Learning Activities drop-down in the left-hand menu. Then click on the Clinical Log option from the left-hand menu. If you have multiple rotations added to this course, the clinical log table will be split up, by rotation, into separate tables. Click on the accordion for a rotation to view the clinical log table for this rotation. In the Clinical Log section, each table contains all the students placed in the course or rotation along with their information related to their clinical logs. In the Logs Count by Status column, you can view the total number of logs added, and this number of logs is categorized by status for each student. In the Log Hours by Status column, you can view the total time indicated on each student's clinical logs, and this time is separated by status. In the Last Encountered column, you can view the last date a clinical log was submitted for. In the Last Update column, you can view the last date that the student has added or modified the clinical logs. Clinical logs can be assigned the yellow pending review status, meaning the student submitted them, and educators now need to review them. The red needs attention status, which indicates that the educator has reviewed the log and found an issue with it, therefore it was marked as needs attention and sent back to the student for them to edit. the green approved status, which indicates that the log has been reviewed and the educator has approved it. On the top of the page, you will see the number of students who have pending review or needs attention clinical logs. You can review pending review clinical logs and keep track of needs attention logs. If a student fails to attend to needs attention logs, you may need to remind them to resubmit them outside of the Exxat system. You can search for specific students using the search box or filter the tables using the filter icon. You can filter the tables by placement setting, clinical log submission status, or placement faculty assigned. Click on the export icon at the top of a table to download the student's clinical logs displayed in the table in the Excel format. Click on a status in a student row to view their logs of that status. Here you can view the student's clinical log submissions relating to this placement. You can use the status dropdown to filter this list by submission status. Select every option to view all the student's clinical logs. On the top of the page, you can check the total number of clinical logs for each status as well as the total amount of time indicated on the clinical logs. As a program administrator, you can change the status of any clinical log. Start by reviewing the clinical logs with the pending review status. Select an individual log ID to review that log. When you select a log, a window will appear with the log information entered. Review this entered information and then you can approve the log using the Approve button or mark a log as needs attention by selecting the Needs Attention button. You can also provide notes to the students in the school feedback section. Please note that if you choose to indicate a log needs attention, you will need to provide a reason to the student in the school feedback text area. The student can then resubmit the log with your advised changes. You can also delete a student's submission by clicking on the Delete hyperlink. You can also make changes directly to the student submission if you notice a simple typo or something similar. After you make changes to the log, click on the Update button. If you would like to download the clinical log for offline access, click on the Export icon. Lastly, if you would like to delete a clinical log entirely, click on the Delete hyperlink. If you want to approve multiple logs at a time, select the checkbox for each log on the left-hand side of the table, then click the Approve button. You can also use the Approve All Logs button to approve every pending review log simultaneously. Scrolling to the right, you can view some of the information fields in the log. Click on the View Log button to view the history of changes to that log's status. Lastly, click on the Export button on the far right-hand side of the page to download an Excel file containing all clinical log information for this student's placement. We offer numerous reports you can run on student-submitted clinical logs to ensure that your program meets accreditation requirements, and your students are adequately prepared for graduation. To access these reports, click on the Learning Activities section from the left-hand drop-down menu. There are a few ways to run reports. You can run reports on all the courses by clicking on the Reports option from the left-hand menu. You can run reports on the courses added to a learning activity group by clicking on a learning activity group and then selecting the Reports tab. You can also run reports on specific courses by selecting the Course Offerings option from the left-hand menu or on the Courses tab of a learning activity group, then selecting the Reports hyperlink within a course row. Lastly, you can run reports on specific rotations by navigating to the Rotations tab of a learning activity group and then selecting the Reports hyperlink for a specific rotation. All these options configure how the report is run, but once you are in the Learning Activity Reports section, you can change the courses, rotations, and other options to run reports. In the Reports section you will find our comprehensive list of learning activity reports. The reports with clinical logs in the module column can be run on clinical logs. We offer numerous reports for you to track student clinical hours, such as the Clock Hours Report, the Clinical Log Report, the Clinical Log Multiple Attributes Age-Wise Report, and the Clinical Log Type of Service Age-Wise Report. The Clock Hours Report aggregates student clinical log hours for easy access. It breaks down student hours by student participation type, type of services delivered, and age of patients serviced. Let's say you would like a total number of direct contact intervention hours with the adult age group for a specific student. This report makes collecting these hours an easy task. To run the report, navigate back to the Reports page of the Learning Activities section and select the Clock Hours option. You will need to first select the courses for which you would like to run the report, then configure the report options. If you access this report from a learning activity group, your desired courses will already be selected. If you navigated to the report from the course offerings section of the learning activities section, you would need to select the courses for which you would like to run the report. Click on the Select Course Offerings button. You can indicate which course offerings you would like to include in the report. You can search for specific course offerings using the search box. You can change the type of the search box using the drop-down menu to the left of the box. You can also filter out courses using the filter icon. You can filter courses by cohort, academic year, or term. You can select up to 50 courses to run the report on at once. To select the first 50 courses on the list, check the box in the upper left-hand corner of the table. Once you have made your selections, click on the Apply button. You can then view the full list of selected courses using the Show More hyperlink in the upper right-hand corner of the page. You can remove selected courses by clicking on the X icon to the right of the course name. Or clear all the courses by selecting the Clear All option. Once you have made your changes, click on the Apply button. When configuring the report options, you can include which rotations, settings, clinical log statuses, students, sites, and locations, clinical educators, modes of delivery, training levels, and dates indicated on the clinical logs for which you would like to include in the report. Using the rotation drop-down, select the rotations you want included in the report. In the Settings section, indicate the placement settings for the student placements you want included in the report. For example, if you leave the Early Intervention placement setting unchecked, this will exclude any placements assigned with this placement setting when running the report. In the Status section, indicate which statuses of clinical logs you would like included in the report. For example, if you would like to run this report only on approved clinical logs, select the Approved option and leave the other options unchecked. In the Students section, indicate which students you would like included in the report. A student's name will appear in this list when they are placed in at least one course you are running the report on. Select a single student at a time to view this student's progress toward their graduation requirements. Then using the site and location drop-downs, you can choose to include or exclude student placements at specific sites and locations. Then using the clinical educator drop-down, select the clinical educators who are assigned to the clinical logs for which you would like included in the report. For example, if you would not like the logs assigned to Amanda Liu included in the report, you would want to select all the other clinical educators and leave Amanda deselected. Using the Mode of Delivery drop-down, you can choose which modes of delivery you would like included in the report. For example, if you would like to run the report to view clinical hours which had an in-person mode of delivery, select the in-person option and leave the others unselected. In the Training Level section, indicate if you would like to run this report on graduate-level encounters or undergraduate encounters. Lastly, using the To Date and From Date fields, you can choose to only include clinical logs submitted for specific dates. To do so, click on the From Date field and select a From Date, and then click on the To Date field and select a To Date. Once you have configured all the options, click on the Generate Report button. The first section displays the placement information for the selected student or students. The next table breaks down the student clinical hours by patient age, demographic, and mode of delivery. The total number of hours for the selected clinical logs is displayed in the bottom right-hand corner of the table. The following few tables display the number of intervention and evaluation clinical hours in relation to each of the types of services delivered, bifurcated by patient age group. Below this, you will find a table displaying the total number of evaluation and intervention hours. Below this, another 4 tables are displayed breaking up the 2 intervention and evaluation tables. Both the intervention and evaluation tables are broken up by student participation type, direct contact, and observation. Again, the student clinical hours added to each of the types of service are displayed and bifurcated by patient age group. Under the direct contact and observation sections, there will be a small table displaying the total direct contact hours and total observation hours. Below this, there are 2 other tables displaying clinical hours with relation to placement settings and training level. Lastly, at the bottom of the page, you will see the attestations that supervisors have attested to and the number of hours they reviewed. If you would like to export this report for offline access, click on the Export icon at the top of the page, located next to the Generate Report button. Using the clinical log report, you can view aggregated clinical hours for each student with relation to each student participation option and mode of delivery combination, each student participation option and training level combination, patient age group, each individual patient demographic option, student participation option, mode of delivery, and interventional and evaluative practice. To run the clinical log report, navigate back to the Reports page of the Learning Activities section and select the clinical log report. You will then need to select the courses for which you would like to run the report on and configure the report options. You can select the rotations, settings, statuses, students, sites, and locations for which you would like to run the report on. When you are done, click on the Generate Report button. In the Student Participation/Mode of Delivery section, you can view the number of hours each student has entered for each student participation type and mode of delivery option. It is possible to assign minimum and maximum requirements to each combination. If you would like to set up this minimum and maximum amount of time, please reach out to our support team at prism-support@exxat.com to get this configured. Once you have set up this minimum and maximum required time, this time will be displayed in the minimum and maximum rows. If a student does not meet the minimum required time, the report will alert you by marking the student's time red. At the bottom of the table, you can view the total submitted time for each student's participation and mode of delivery combination. The student participation level/training level table shows similar information, but the number of hours for each participation level and training level combination is displayed. In the age group table, the student's total number of clinical hours for each of the age groups is displayed. Lastly, in the overall summary table, you can view each student's total clinical time for each patient demographic option, the total clinical time for each mode of delivery, the total clinical time for each training level, the total interventional time, the total evaluative time, and the absolute total time indicated on their clinical logs. Lastly, if you would like to export this report for offline access, click on the export icon at the top of the page, located next to the Generate Report button. The clinical log multiple attributes, age-wise report aggregates clinical log data by mode of delivery, interventional and evaluative practice, student participation, training level and patient age demographics. You can use this report to view the total clinical time each student has indicated with relation to each patient age group for each mode of delivery and practice type combination, student participation and practice type combination, and training level and practice type combination. To run this report, navigate to the Reports page of the Learning Activities section and select the Clinical Log Multiple Attributes Age-Wise Report. You will then select the courses to run the report on and configure the report options. In addition to configuring the rotations, settings, statuses, students, sites, and locations, you can also select the mode of delivery options, student participation options, and training levels that you would like to include in the report. After you have configured the report, click on the Generate Report button. Within each table, you can view the total amount of time each student has submitted for each patient age group. For example, if you would like to check the amount of time each student has indicated on their clinical logs where they indicated the encounter was with the adult age group, of the direct contact student participation type, and interventional, scroll to the student participation intervention table and then locate the direct contact column, then locate the adult age group column. Each student's time will be displayed in the rows within this column. The total time all students submitted for this type of clinical encounter will be displayed in the columns at the bottom of the table. The clinical log, types of service, age-wise report is like the clinical log, multiple attributes, age-wise report in that it aggregates the student clinical hours to view the total number of clinical hours for each patient age demographic, for each type of service, bifurcated into intervention and evaluation tables. To run this report, navigate to the Reports page of the Learning Activities section and select the Clinical Log Types of Service Age-Wise Report. You will then select the courses to run the report on and configure the report options. In addition to configuring the rotations, settings, statuses, students, sites, and locations, you can also select the mode of delivery options, student participation options, and training levels that you would like to include in the report. After you have configured the report, click on the Generate Report button. There will be two tables. One for interventive practice and another for evaluative practice. Students will be displayed in rows and each type of service and age group combination will be displayed in columns. For each type of service, there is a column for each age group and a column for the total amount of time submitted. Additionally, there will be rows displaying the total amount of time submitted by all students for each type of service and age group combination. For example, if you wanted to check the amount of interventional time Janet Brown has submitted and indicated that the type of service provided was voice and resonance to the adult age demographic, scroll to the intervention table, locate the Janet Brown student row, and then scroll right to find the voice and resonance adult column. At the intersection of this row and column, you will find the amount of related time. Lastly, you can use the raw data report to view all of the clinical logs according to your desired criteria. To run this report, navigate to the Reports page of the Learning Activities section and select the Clinical Log Raw Data Report. You will then need to select the courses that you would like to run the report on and configure the report options. You will need to select the rotations, settings, statuses, students, sites, and locations that you would like included in the report. After you have configured the report, click on the Generate Report button. In the table below there will be a row for each log entry. You can view the student who submitted the clinical log, the course for which the log was added, placement information, and clinical log information. You can scroll right to view all the options selected on each clinical log. If you would like to download this report in Excel format, click on the download icon. Click on the View Log button to open a new page containing the student's clinical log. You can manage and update the student's clinical log from this page. Thank you for watching our Setting Up and Reviewing Clinical Logs tutorial. Please take the time to check out our other useful Exxat Prism tutorials.